Hi, Xavier down the bottom of the garden again. Sun's coming through, and this is the first of the days that I've actually been able to do some filming down here. Obviously we've had a busy weekend. We've had all three neighbours doing their lawn mowing, rebuilding their roofs, digging pools, anything else that makes loads of noise, so it probably wasn't that suitable for videoing, but I've been waiting to be doing the air layer on this. This was a Linden that I got from my Avalan nursery in 2017, I think. It's been the roots have been developed, and I've had it in this pot now for 2 or 3 years. Just when I first got it, it was just a basic branch, basic trunk, and now I've just developed these branches. Certainly not the finished product by a long way, but what I have identified is that about here I want to do an air layer, and I'll take it across there, develop that as a whole new tree, which I think I indicated in one of my earlier videos. It's healthy, lots of leaf, just that point where all the growth is starting to harden off, so now's a good time. So it's just about taking the layer. I'll take it from this side because I've got a lot of room, and again, looking at the angle, I want the air layer to actually be at that point, so the tree's leaning off this way, so you get a trunk that way, then up this branch. So I'll be doing basically horizontal to the plane of the pot. Various different techniques in terms of how you do it. I've done air layers where I've actually opened up the cambium and then used a pot filled with soil. I've done it filled with moss, but in the end the most success I've had is the good old-fashioned plastic from an old Akadama bag, wrapped around here, filled with sphagnum moss. This year I'm going to do sphagnum moss and also perlite, which is just another moisture retention. But I heard with some trees it works as good as a sphagnum for developing roots. So we'll see this year. It's a bit of an experiment, and I'm also trying to save because I haven't got that much sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss I've got ordered. I think it's the New Zealand stuff. It's had a good soaking overnight, so I'll mix that in first. Then I'll mark out probably at least the cut will be at least the thickness of the trunk to try and avoid bridging. So I'll probably cut down here, and then it'll be another probably 1.5 centimeters up. Cut away that whole area, nice straight, clean cuts, and then put the sphagnum. But you'll see me doing that. Hopefully I better talk as I go, but I will do the more close-up work there. Can look pretty clumsy, and for that I apologise now. It'll be a bit of a messy old debacle, but this is one of, I think, definitely 2, maybe 3, because I've got another hornbeam I'm going to do. So anyway, without further boredom, blah 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 blah, I'll get straight into it. Cheers. Mix some sphagnum. Suitable for this, probably in a good handful. It's going to be wrapped right around, but better to make too much than not enough. So I've already got a container, probably quite a lot of perlite in it. Is it perlite or vermiculite? I always get them mixed up. We'll get some sphagnum mixed in with this. I've probably done 12, 13 air layers over the last 3 or 4 years. I don't do them a lot. That's more as confidence than anything, but also because I haven't had the trees to do it with. The early days of maples, I've probably had a sort of 50-50 success rate, and that's again probably down to technique more than anything. I've had great success with the common garden cherry or whatever you see lining the streets. You've seen some of those. I like to be able to form a nice ball with it, but it'll hold around the tree while I'm trying to wrap the plastic. That's perfect for me. So okay, but I'm just going to clean the rubbish off my hands. Okay, it's Xavier, actually in my studio. I don't know if it's called a studio, it's actually the front room. But I've looked back over the editing of the video I've tried to do on air layering, and as I thought, it can be just a little bit confusing. So what I've done is I've just recorded this a little bit, well I must have because you're seeing it, to give a more clear explanation before you actually see the air layer work that I did, and hopefully in conjunction with what I say now versus what you see, you may actually by the end of it go, bingo, I think I know what he's talking about. And if you don't, then truly give up on me and find someone who knows what they're talking about. But firstly, air layer. It's absolutely fantastic, and most of you will know about it. But if you don't, you know, the first ever air layer I took, and you've seen this tree numerous times, is little common prunus. You see it in the streets. It's the cherry. This one's actually it's got little black cherry. I've left a little couple of black cherries to develop, but this was taken as an air layer off a cherry in an old garden I had, and I literally ring barked it, covered it in normal compost soil in a pot, wrapped around the trunk, and I took 3, and they were so successful I thought I'd better actually find out how that worked. I'm about to go through that process, but I'll show you 2 air layers that are in the stage before that. They haven't actually got to pots. They were taken off the tree last year. But if you look up there, hopefully I've got a picture showing my neighbour's maple tree coming through the fencing. And initially I was like, oh, here we go, we're going to have everything coming through. And I actually thought, actually it's maple, and maybe give it another year I might take an air layer. And then if you look at the picture now, I've done here an air layer on 2 of the branches that have come through, and using just a simple sphagnum moss technique, wrapping them in a bag. Kept those air layers on for 3 months, separated them around about end of August, and put the whole bundle into pots, producing these. They've now been in this pot nearly a year, and getting nice growth on them, as you can see. But basically the air layers have taken, they had a good set of roots. When I separated them, I didn't disturb the roots, just put the whole sphagnum moss, a lot, straight into soil. The difference I'll do this year, and you'll see it later on in the year, is when I separate the air layers, rather than putting it into a normal potting compound soil, I'm going to just cover it with a lot more sphagnum moss and let it grow in sphagnum moss. And that's literally as a result of Peter Chan's video from herons, and the success he has with his air layering. So how does it actually work? Here's the science, and as they say, we always follow the science, because the science never ever lies. The key thing you need to know: tree, round trunk. Well, hopefully it's a round trunk. We all know that around the trunk bark develops. Look at these concentric rings. Added 2 drinks there. So this bit here, the bark. Okay. We then go down, and the next layer we need to know. And I'll say this now: the thicknesses that I'm showing are not necessarily proportional, representationally correct. But this layer here is called the phloem. And what the phloem does is all the nutrients that come from the leaves, they go down the phloem and feed direct to the roots. So that's where your starches and sugars, or just your sugars, everything that the roots need to grow goes down the phloem. So the first thing you recognise, that if we remove the phloem, then we're not going to allow any nutrients to go to the roots. The roots won't grow. So we're going to have a build up in all these starches. So then we've got the next circle. Look, that's a nice red one, probably see that better. This area here is called, and hopefully that's coming out, the cambium. The main purpose of the cambium is, this is what causes our callousing, but it's all about, it creates the new growth, new bark, tissue. So that's what causes the tree to thicken out, and that's the cambium. So it'll produce all the new wood and growth. Often that's also the reason why our layers fail, and I'll explain to you that in a minute. So the cambium is also a layer that we like to get rid of, because we don't want calluses forming. And then the next one is another smaller layer, and that's called the xylem. The xylem phone, And the xylem is a means for the roots to send water up, back out to the tissue leaves to keep them moisturized and hydrated. So that's the main way of getting water back up through the tree. But you've then got to start getting the first of the really harder parts, sapwood. And you'll notice that as you cut it, that'll be the first point where the knife pretty well stops. It'll be a healthy sort of brown looking colour. It won't look dead, but it's the first point when you reach and you realise you've taken all the bark off. And also through the sapwood you also get water being sent up through the core of the tree, feeding normally the crown. So again, you can get moisture still going up. And then finally we've got the big hard bony bit in the middle which stops the tree falling over, and that's the dead centre, so to speak, the hardwood centre of the tree. So the main thing to remember there is that we've got the phloem. So when we cut through, we're trying to cut through the phloem. I'll do a better diagram in it. But we're trying to cut through the phloem, we're trying to cut through the cambium. We'll inadvertently probably cut through the xylem anyway when we ring bark. So what we end up doing, our trunk, we take our knife, we cut there, and we cut there, and then we remove all of that. What we're left with is the trunk there, trunk there, what we should be left with is that central bit, which is the sapwood and the hardwood. Everything else that would have been here has been either cut away with a knife, come away in the bark, or we've scraped down with a knife to just remove. And so that should be that nice clear core, which you should see a picture of about there. And numerous times when you do air layers, that's what you get. When I talk about a clean cut, up here is what we want is to have a nice clean slice, so that all the cells that start reproducing or will create your new roots from aren't broken and bent, but they're actually able to work. That's a really terrible explanation, but that's basically what we're trying to do. And we want all our new roots to come and grow from here. So in short, what we're doing with the air layer is removing the ability of the tree to produce root, to feed the lower roots. So what it does is, if I can't feed the roots, what am I going to do with all this starch and sugar and goodness knows what else? I'm going to form new roots up at this cut site. Now if we don't remove enough of the cambium, what happens is that this area here where we've cut away can callus over, and if it calluses sufficiently, we might actually callus where we actually bridge the gap, thereby allowing the flow of nutrients up and down, and the layer fails. So either this all just dies off at the top, or it actually still allows a small flow, but either way what we don't get are roots. So when we call bridging, that's what we're trying to ensure doesn't happen, which is why you've got to really be quite sure and precise when you scrape away your xylem, your cambium and your phloem. So hopefully, he says, looking at his various diagrams, that is an expressions of grace, excellent explanation of the science behind air layering. And if it's not, I'm sorry, I tried. Right, let's go back and let's actually see me trying to do it, and it does look pretty bad. Okay, cheers. Okay, so nice sharp knife. You can use a pencil to mark it, but I'm just digging nice and deep. As I say, what you're trying to do is make sure you get rid of all the cambium. I use a curved knife. Take your time. Now, the area you're going to want from is the top. That's where you need the cut to be clean, but still want to have the bottom nice and clean as well. Nice and deep. Looks like I've just taken the legs off a spider. I'm sorry. first cut, and then I'm going to go up probably thickness of that again, so I'm probably going to take it up to about here. And the key again, try and remain parallel between the two lines. Now whenever I see experts like Peter Chan doing this, or any of the others experts, they're able to lift this off quite simply. It just peels away. That's better, it doesn't do that here. Okay. It's probably one of the few times when I say a lot less, simply because I'm concentrating more on this. This is definitely not the cleanest. What we're going to do is just scrape off all the residual cambium and phloem and whatever so that we can absolutely ensure there's no chance of there being any bridging between there to there, which is what the roots will want to do, which is often why you get a failed layer. So get as much as that, and as I say, this bottom doesn't have to be as clean, but this top lip definitely has to be nice and clean, because that's where your new roots are going to develop from. I remember the first time I did this, I was absolutely petrified that the tree was a goner. I didn't really understand how the process worked, because obviously what you're doing is you'll still get water being taken up through the center, as I understand it, but all the energies now from the top half will be directed into creating roots. And you see the whole idea, nice and clean, and it's this line. This is the one you want to be nice and clean and sharp. Now again, get this head nice and clean. I'm definitely going to take your hats off to all those creators who regularly do this on film, because I'm really struggling to do this and also concentrate on giving any sort of commentary. So I apologise now. I'm now just constantly tidying up this top end. Okay, looks fairly clean. I'm pretty confident that's enough. And the worst case, if the layer fails, I lose that part of the tree, but this main tree is where I'm going to be developing anyway. So, happy that's clean. Happy I've got sharp edges at the top. I'll put a little bit of rooting hormone. Just now what I need to do is measure out my bag. So looking at that, what I want to do is be able to wrap it around and then have a nice cup, and you'll see when I do it. Very hard to describe. Okay. So will that go around there nicely? Okay. Also want some wire that I can use as securing to create a sort of basket shape around it. Careful with this. idea is to get a nice tight bag of This is where you always need more fingers than you actually have. Now what we do, start tucking all that in. Probably one of the messiest LAs people have seen, I've no doubt. Certainly not up to the standard of Bonsai Mirai, or actually anyone who knows what they're doing. And then we take the wire, and say we're creating basically a cup. Now we have to just very carefully cram some more in there to get it nice. The whole idea is to get it right around that. Basically what you're creating is the damp conditions required for this to root. It's right down the base there. Okay, that is really truly messy layer, but if it holds and the moss is sphagnum moss is tight enough around it, and that should do the job. My only real concern, I might not have enough moss in there. Probably my only real concern. Okay, so just need some holes at the bottom so water can come out. And hopefully that's going to do the air layer. Probably leave it 2-3 months, keep an eye on it, make sure it stays damp, but you should get rainwater coming in from the top anyway. And then you're just looking for those telltale white roots, so I'll put it somewhere semi-shaded for now, and we shall see. Might just do a little bit of prune just on this one. The lower branches just beneath that. Not taking off too much because I actually want it to get as much energy up there as possible, because the more energy it's getting there, the more it's going to be driven to create roots. Just basic neatening up. Right, so I think it wasn't the most attractive or prettiest of our layers. I'll have another go at Hornbeam next, but hopefully that will do the job. Okay, I'm going to apologise for the lawnmower, but I can't wait any longer. I didn't actually think I was going to do the second one on the camera, but this Hornbeam was one of my first. Got it in 2001 as a little whip, and it's been growing in various different guises. but basically it's always had this one-sided shape, and I think it was a cricket ball there and something, there was another cricket ball here that removed what was a very, very nice branch to give this good definition. I've had it like this for many years, and I've always known I was going to wear layer, but I haven't had the confidence to do it because it was one of my first trees. So if it all goes wrong, all I'll be left with is this lower portion. But if it goes well, I'll have this lower portion I can do something with, some literati style, and potentially this whole top half here will be a new tree. This will be definitely time lapse. Hopefully it'll be a much needed job. I'm not going to actually do any speaking, which is probably a good thing anyway. I'm also going to try a different technique. I've had success again, and it's the old plastic pot. You wrap it around the sides of the layer and hold it in position. And all you need to do is make sure there's a little hole there that'll sit on there. The way the branch is, it's quite horizontal, so it's going to give it a nice bit of support anyway. Cut down the side, and then when it's all filled in with sphagnum, I'll then wire around it. So hopefully that too should have a reasonable amount of success. So again, same principle. I used the blade because I thought it was sharper and I thought I'd get a better cut, but in the end this worked just as well. Edges are nicely cleaned up at the tops. It's a good centimetre and a half, which is at least the thickness of the trunk and a bit. So again, same thing, just need to brush a little hormone up in there. And remember, the root's coming from this part, not this part, so that's where you're looking at your root spread coming from. And the key here is to make sure you're trying to achieve 100% solid contact with the site of the cut where you've actually removed that layer. Well, I've committed to it, so worst case scenario, the top will fail and I'll have to try and do something with this bottom. So that's firmly in position there. And the only difference with doing it this way is that you're not actually going to see the root coming out, so you'd actually have to open it up a little bit. So this one I'll tend to probably keep it on longer. But Hornbeam is supposed to root pretty well. Okay, so that's going to be it for that. And we'll see how we'll have a look at that probably in about 3, maybe 4 months time. And hopefully that's going to be full of roots. Who knows? It may be complete and utter disaster, but what I do know is that all the little critters that were in the leaves that I've been leaning over are now going down my shirt. So I think yours truly is going to go and have a shower, and then a nice bit of lunch, and then I'm going to watch a bit of Walking Dead, because I feel like some Walking Dead right now, because that's pretty well how this is going to look, I'm sure, in about 3 months, and I'm going to regret it intensely. Cheers.